We're going to talk about what executive functioning is, ways to support your child, and then some practical applications that you can apply at home and your kids can do at school as well. So basically, an official definition by the Harvard University, executive functioning skills are those regulation skills that we use. Sorry, I have to fix my screen really fast. I can't see what I'm presenting right now. It's basically juggling multiple tasks, like an air traffic controller doing all of those things. It's managing multiple different ideas, prioritizing, setting goals. Or a simpler way, Seth Perler, he is an executive functioning coach, says executive functioning skills are basically getting stuff done. And that's really the easiest way to think about some of that. Executive functioning is primarily occurs in the prefrontal cortex. There we go. Sorry. And I do like how, and I don't know if you know about brain development, they have determined recently that the prefrontal cortex is the last part of the brain to finally get developed, and it even is developing into our 20s now. I think they're saying about 25. So it makes sense that sometimes people struggle with organization or task initiation or time management when they're younger, because that part of their brain is not fully developed yet. So for some people, it takes a little bit more. But I did like the highlighted part where it says it relates to abilities to differentiate among conflicting thoughts, good and bad, better and best, same and different, future consequences, goals, predictions, outcomes. I like that definition a lot, and it was from the Science of Psychology. These are some of the executive functioning skills. I am going to be talking tonight about planning and organization, time management, task initiation, a little bit about persistence, and then some flexibility at the end. We are not born with these skills naturally. Some of us have a tendency to have more of one than the other, and we have to build up the other ones, but we always have the ability to develop these capabilities. Kids learn best with support and guidance, modeling, reinforcing these skills, especially if it is a bigger deficit for your child. Repeatedly practicing these skills to attain the mastery is key. Some of us might be super organized and our kids are not, and that's okay. It's harder for us to understand why they're not organized, but it happens. But they also might be really unorganized too. And it's a learning curve. Some benefits of mastering some of the executive functioning skills is it helps with school achievement, increases positive behaviors, and good health. And when I talk about good health, I talk to the kids about less stress. When you're organized and you can plan accordingly, it decreases the stress, which leads to a healthier life, and then more success at school or work. So the first one that we're going to talk about is planning and organization. And I often show pictures of an organized desk and a messy desk to the kids. And I say, which one are you going to be able to find your math paper in easier? And they all agree that it's always the more organized one. And I said, you don't have to be super neat, but because if you're okay with the chaos of this, then that's okay. But know that it's going to lead to increased stress and anxiety, and you're going to waste time because you're not able to find things. So if you can ease yourself towards a little bit more organized, your life will end up being easier because you know where things are. Our brain loves for things to be in order. Our brain is organized in all sorts of different categories. We store memories in the same place. We store new ideas in the same place, and our brain loves it. So one of the things that I talk to the kids about, and it's great especially for at home if you've got bedroom and play areas that make you crazy, is that every item has a home. Everything has a place. And if you put it back in that place, then you're not going to know exactly where it is when you need it next time. And one of the things I say to them is, if you have a gaming system at your house, do you know where it is right now? And they're always raising their hands saying, oh yeah, I know exactly where it is. And I said, well, why is that? And first of all, it's because it's important to them. And it's something that they use all the time, or that people in the house use all the time. And they know that if it's not there, it's going to create chaos. And so that's the example of everything having a home. And it makes sense where it is. Typically it's by a TV or a computer where they're playing that game. And so then we talk about, well, where do you put your jacket after school? And, you know, sometimes they're like, oh, I put it on the hook by the door, or I throw it on the couch, or sometimes it's in the car, or sometimes it's in my backpack. And then we talk about how that is not having a home, and that it makes it more difficult when you need to be out the door the next morning for school. So everything should have a home. One of the other things that is helpful a lot of times for our kids that are not super organized is going through their backpack periodically for a clean out. And every child is different. And depending on what your child needs and the amount of support your child needs, it could be a daily clean out, it could be a weekly clean out, it could be an end of the quarter clean out. It just depends on how your child navigates that. There are a lot of systems that you can put into place: labels, maps, pictures, checklists, and we're going to talk about those in a second. And then the big thing is, especially for the littles and even for the bigger kids, is modeling what you mean. It's easy to say, you need to go put everything away. Well, that, as an adult, you know exactly what that means, but sometimes children, they don't understand exactly what that means. It's like they think that they understand what it means, but they really don't know. So modeling it is key to help them with that. So as far as some ideas for organization, one of the first ones are these luggage tags. And you guys, and I don't know if you can see me right now. I'll wait until later. I'll take it off share in a second. But luggage tags, and putting to-dos and checklists on them. And I have a screen that I'll show you, a pre-made one, and you can get it off the internet for free, or you can make your own. But for the littles, do I have my homework? Do I have my book? Do I have my lunch? Do I have my jacket? For the older kids who may not want to have a luggage tag out where everybody sees it, it could be tucked inside somewhere, making sure that they have everything that they need for school that day. Do you have your project? Do you have your binder? Do you have your school ID? Do you have your phone? Do you have your laptop? Do you have your house key? Depending on what your children need help with. So that is one quick way. You can get the luggage tags if you want a real luggage tag like this, like at the dollar stores, or sometimes we have extra ones, you know, on our luggage. Nobody's really traveling right now. You could probably use one of those. And then I'll show you where you can find a pre-made one, or you can do your own. Another system that works well, especially for the older kids, probably third, fourth, fifth grade, middle school, high school, is a colored system. Whether it's the colored folders match the composition notebook that go with that class. So green is science, yellow is math, and so on. If that system works for your kid. Sometimes this type of system ends up being too much for some kids if they get overstimulated or get distracted in systems, but it can be a very good one for certain kids. And then when I talk about a picture of what things should look like, this is primarily for the littler kids. If their bedroom is constantly an issue, you have them, or you help them, or they clean it up. And once it's the way that it's supposed to be, you either take a picture of the room, or you have them draw a map of the room where things go. So they have that reference when they want to go back. And it's like, okay, I don't remember where my teddy bear goes. And it's like, oh, wait, I can look at my map of my room. And I know that mom wants it to be on the shelf, and that's where we put it. And that makes sense because that's a good spot for it. Or I know that my books go here. Or what do I do with my Legos when I'm done? And then they can go back and look at that picture, and know where things are. But that's primarily for littler guys, but it still is very helpful because then they don't have to think so hard, or the task isn't so overwhelming for them that they don't even know where to begin. If they have a map or a picture, then it's easier for them to put it together, sort of like a puzzle. This is the example of those luggage tags, and it's actually from understood.org. And at the end of the presentation, I have all of the resources listed, but they are great about a lot of free, quick take homes. It fits inside, just a little luggage tag if you want to do that for your guys. Can go inside a notebook. It can be laminated inside a front pack of a backpack, but you don't have to go create your own if you don't want to. They're there for you. You print them out, you fill them out, and then you're good to go. One of the other things that I talk about with my students with organization and planning is, and I'm going to take this off share for a second. And here's the picture of, like, the luggage tags that I'm talking about. But one of the things that I talk to them about is organization and how many of them routinely make their beds every day. And a lot of times I get I don't make it at all, or my mom makes it. And so we talk about how there's been some research done that, and I don't know how sound it is, but I've read a lot of different things that say that if people regularly make their bed, they often tend to be more successful. And so what I say to the kids are, what is typically the biggest thing in your bedroom? And they know that it's their bed. And I said, if you walk in and your bed is made, what do you look at next? And they're like, oh, well, then I look at my toys, or I look at, whatever's on the ground. And I said, and then what do you think about that? And they're like, well, my bed's made, I might as well pick those up. So a lot of times it's an easy first step for kids to take that step in organization. And if they start making their bed, then they're going to say, oh, okay, now my bed's made, and that really didn't take that long. So now maybe I'm going to work on my books, or I'm going to work on my puzzles, or I'm going to work on all my stuffies, or whatever I have around the room. And it helps begin that habit of routine. And routine is critical with the organization. I mean, we all know it takes practice, practice, practice to get things to become sound. And so they usually end up telling me when they've tried it for a few weeks, they're like, yeah, I really like it. Or my mom actually noticed that I was cleaning up my room and it's easier to find stuff. And so that's an easy way to start with the planning and organization, are just those small baby steps. So let's go back to the next one. All right, so, and like I said, that's from understood.org, and they've got a lot of great free stuff on there. So the next one that we're going to talk about is time management. And it's to be able to accurately estimate how long something is going to take us to do and to make efficient use of our time. One of the things I start with all the elementary kids that I do is I have them close their eyes and I say, go, and they have to raise their hand when a minute is up. And for the most part, 75% of the kids do not get, even when they're counting, they're like, hey, but I was counting. And they still don't have that grasp of exactly how long time is. Even the older kids, like my 5th and 6th graders, they're off on the estimation. So it's important to teach that skill. It's like realistically looking at homework and looking at projects and having an idea of how long things will actually take. When you ask them, how long does it take you to get ready for bed at night? And if they say, oh, 3 minutes, it's like, okay, well, you should be taking 2 minutes to brush your teeth. Do you really get everything else done in a minute? And they're like, oh, no. And so if you sort of coach them through that and teach them how long time activities really take, it helps teach them to make those estimates more accurately. So on this one, some of the things with time management is calendars, planners, agendas, checklists, to-do lists, sticky notes. And it's hard to say all of them, none of them. It's whatever works best for your child and the way they think and learn and how their brain works. Calendars are great for the older kids where they have more extended projects or long-term things that they have to do, where they can look out past just today and they know what's coming up. Most of the schools have planners of some sort. I know if your child is in distance learning right now, it's a little bit different because they've got different ways of keeping track of all of the work. But if your child is in middle school is the time when planners become a huge tool. Like they're actually required to use planners to keep track of everything. And I always tell my 5th and 6th graders in elementary school, it's like, you guys want to get it figured out now, so that when you're in middle school, it's actually a tool for you and it's not a stressor for you on how to use planners and agendas. Littler guys, you want to use For like the itty bitties, you're going to want to create the list with them, whether it's, picture list or, a chore chart that they figure out what they have to do. Older kids, you can start with, 2 or 3 to-dos where they check boxes when they complete it. Older kids, 3 to 5 things on their list. And then the bigger kids, it's like whatever they're required to do. You want to adjust it accordingly to their age development and to their abilities and what they're wanting to learn from that. Routines and time management. I know life's a little weird right now, but routines are critical for kids who struggle with time management. It's important for them to know what's coming, how long it's going to take, and so that they can make those plans accordingly. You want to look at scheduled activities versus free time. How much time are they spending in scheduled activities versus how much time do they have for free time? Are they managing that well, or are they spending way too much time in front of the computer playing Roblox or whatever they're playing versus what the things that they should be doing or are required to do for school? Another thing with time management is breaking down big tasks into smaller, manageable parts with timelines. Sometimes kids, when they start, we're going to talk about this in a little bit too, but sometimes they don't even know how to start a project because it's too big. So if you chunk it, it makes it easier for them to manage it. Even just a math homework sheet that has, say, 30 problems on it for our older kids, sometimes that is overwhelming. It's like, man, that is going to take me all night. If you encourage them to break it down, it's like, okay, set a timer for 10 minutes and let's see how far you get. And then you can make a plan for the rest of the homework sheet or the rest of your evening. Or if you need to take a break, a physical break, a mental break, or what they call a brain break, to make those things more manageable. But the time management is really one that really needs to be coached by the adults around them. We talked about the planner for middle school. Don't assume that they know how to fill it out. Middle school and teachers do a really good job of showing them, but sometimes it's overwhelming. So you want to make sure they're using it to their advantage and show them all of the ways that it can be beneficial to them. And then I'll show you on the next page too, there are a lot of phone apps. A lot of our older kids have phones, and there's a lot of time management apps on there that are pretty good, and digital calendars. Digital calendars don't work really well for me because I can't see far enough out on them and I have to click on all of the dates to see. So, but some people are really good with that and that works for their brain. So you have to continually tweak what works for your kids based on how they learn. The other thing with time management that I talk to my students about are those time wasters. Procrastination is a big one. Distractors, having your phone with you when you're doing homework. There's been some research into that even if your phone is on silent and like it's turned upside down so you can't see the screen light up, that it is still a distraction during homework time. So for our older kids, 5th, 6th, middle school and high school, if you can get them to put it in a different room or on the other side of the room where they're not tempted to click on it and check their Instagram or their Twitter page or whatever, it really helps them to stay more focused during their homework. Now, some of that I know is our kids use their phones for research because it's the easiest access to the computer world or the research world that they have, but you need to teach them how to manage that appropriately. But they've done a lot of studies that say that the phone, even being in visual sight, is a huge distractor for kids. Let's see. Looks like something came up in the chat. Let me see really fast. Why is it not showing up? Anya, I cannot get the chat to show. Can you read the question to me? Can you see it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It says, do you have any suggestions on how to help them avoid playing games while they're on the computer for distance learning?
Oh, that is so hard. I mean, depending on what your distance learning teacher is doing, honestly, the best thing to do is to be present. And I know that's hard because we're all trying to work and do our things from home too. But having that accountability, knowing that you might pop in or somebody might pop in, and then you can also do some sort of reward system for them too. If they stay off games while they're supposed to be DL, because I know they have like a ton of tabs open and they're clicking back and forth and it's hard to see what's happening. But if you can work out a routine with them or a schedule and reward them for, their integrity with their schoolwork, that might help. But honestly, the best one and the hardest one, because we are also busy trying to do our jobs, is actually being there monitoring it. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And if you guys have other ones, just keep going. And then maybe, Anya, we can just continue to do that. I'm not sure why the chat won't pop up on my screen right now.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Let's see. So yeah, so the time wasters, so the distractors with the phone, procrastination. And we kind of talked about that a little bit with sometimes they just don't know where to start. And you want to give them that support so that they can, oh, there we go. So that they can feel like they have a starting point. You brainstorm, you set a timeline, all of those things. And some of the time wasters are lack of planning. They think that their math homework is going to take them 10 minutes, when in actuality, it's going to take them a good 30 or 40 minutes. So you want to have those conversations where they're looking at things realistically, and that they can be planned out. And if math, for example, is a trigger for your kid because it is so difficult and it's hard for you because you think, man, here we go, math time, break it up into chunks. Give them a physical and mental break after a few minutes so that they can stay fresh. Once our brain starts to shut down, and we start getting stressed and our stress levels go up, we start breathing differently and we don't get the oxygen that we really need in our brain. We take really short breaths. So just teaching them some of those simple breathing techniques, getting them to go take a walk, go get a drink of water, go pet your dog for like 2 minutes and come back, and taking some deep cleansing breaths can really help them to stay more on track and more focused when they're attacking something that is difficult and anxiety provoking for them. The other time wasters, just sometimes being lazy, and it happens. We all have those days. I have those days, but you just want to be aware of it, and your kids need to be aware of it. And it's like, okay, we're having a lazy day right now, but now we're going to need to get on it, because you've got a science project and I've got some work and you have math, and then you need to move through it. So this is back from 2019. Sorry, I didn't get any new ones. But these are some of the time management apps that are out there that may work depending on the age of your child and what they need. And like I said, it's in the PowerPoint. I think you guys will have access to the PowerPoint at the end. And if you don't, you can just give me your email and I can totally send it to you so that you guys have these if you want it.
Also, we're going to be posting it on our parent university website.
Perfect.
And so it's going to be ready probably by the end of the week. You guys are going to be able to find it there too.
There we go. Thank you. So, and then these are just other examples. We kind of talked about it. Calendars, especially for the older kids, when it's important to plan out not just what you're doing today or this week, but what is due in 2 or 3 weeks, and having that visual reminder so that there's that accurate planning and that accountability component. It's like, it's easy to say, oh, I have something due in 4 weeks, but if you don't have a visual reminder of it, it can sneak up on you. And then one of the other ones is task initiation and perseverance. And it's just that starting projects and then sticking with it. And I talked about this briefly before, is that sometimes we think our kids are lazy. It's like, why are they not starting that? When really that's not what it is. They have no idea how to start that science project because it's so big. So if you help them breaking those things down into chunks, that time management, that coming up with a system and an agenda and a timeline, it helps them get started in that project. Persistence, sticking to it. And I mean, that's hard for grownups. It's like when stuff gets hard, it's like, well, this isn't fun anymore. I don't want to do this. It's like, I don't want to ride my Peloton anymore. It's too hard. I don't want to stick with my exercise regime. The persistence is what pays off at the end. It's like, if you see things through, But it all builds on that planning and that time management. Like I said, it's like if there's something out there that you need to do, you have to take all of those baby steps to get it started. One of the things for us as adults to help our kids persevere through things is praise their effort. We often get caught up with our kids saying, oh, you got straight A's, that was so awesome, you're so smart, when what you want to be looking at is, look how hard you worked for this, you really stuck through this. You want to be specific on what you praise. You know, like when they learn to ride their bikes, you push so hard on those pedals, and versus you're the best bike rider ever, when in fact they're probably not. We say that they're our kids and we think they're marvelous, but we want to give them those realistic expectations, like, oh, it doesn't matter that I'm the best or I'm not the best, but they noticed how hard I worked. And it's really the hard work that what we want to reinforce. It's not so much the end result, because that's really not what we should be focusing on with our kids. We want to be able to give them the impression that they can do something. And even if it's hard, they are able to push through it because they know that they have the ability to work hard, even when it gets yucky and difficult. You want to give, you want to praise the effort versus the outcome. Because if you, maybe you growing up or even in your job, you work really hard at something and you feel like it's the best you did, and then the outcome isn't what everybody else was expecting, you get sort of marginal feedback, and that sort of discourages you on trying hard the next time. And if you think about kids and like those science projects and those social studies posters that they have to do and the research projects they have to do, it's like if they are working their very best and they get a B- or a C, and you say, oh, you did great, it's going to be fantastic, like you did so good, it was a nice job. Well, the reinforcement that they're getting from the outside world is that it wasn't a nice job and they didn't do great. And so you want to really praise that effort. And it's like, you work so hard, and you stuck with it when it was difficult and you made it to the end. So that's really part of what the adults can do with that perseverance part, and actually helping them initiate tasks. And if you allow your kids to quit, and I'm guilty of it. When my kid was little and he was learning to ski, he thought it was so difficult and he thought his legs were going to fall apart. And he's like, I don't ever want to do this again. And unfortunately, I didn't make him go back to ski. And now he's almost 21 now, but when he finally learned to ski in his late teens, he goes, man, Mom, I wish you'd made me stick with it. And it's like, that's my bad, is that I took it for that he was devastated that it was hard for him and I allowed him to quit. When if he had sort of stuck it through, he may have come out with a different perception of what skiing was like. Is there another question?
Yeah, okay. Do you have any suggestions to get past the accord effect? Example, project may only seem very small, but has a lot of steps, so really makes it seem to take forever.
I think if I'm understanding what the question is if there's a project that seems little, but it's very involved, how to get started in that. Is that what we're asking? And actually, if whoever asked that wants to unmute and chat with me, it would probably be easier that way.
Yeah, well, I think it basically is asking any suggestions about how to encourage them when there is projects that maybe they're not too hard, but it has a lot of steps,
right?
Small steps. So
Okay.
it seems like it's gonna take forever, so they get probably tired or bored.
Right, or it's like, oh, this is just not worth it.
Yeah.
So what you can do, it's sort of the same thing, even if it's a small one, but it seems labor intensive, is that encouragement, breaking it up and having them sort of have a reality check with that time management. It's like, all right, let's look at this, Sweet Pea. It's like, okay, this looks like it's going to be kind of involved. And I don't know what we're going to talk about, but let's say it's going to take you 45 minutes and you really only want to 10. Let's start with 15 right now. And we're going to focus on, step 1, 2, and 3. And once they get through that and they realize that maybe it's not as hard as they thought, it just looks to be difficult, then they're going to get that perception of, oh, okay, it really wasn't that bad. Let's try and chunk another of it together and then let's try the next one and see how we do. And it's like, instead of looking at something that is really big, is it breaking it down into those manageable steps. And I get what you're saying is like, sometimes they build it up in their brain that it's just going to be so hard. But if you can get them to start, it's like, and sometimes it takes, you know, us sitting with them and that encouragement and that you've got this, we're going to work on this together. We're going to get a timeline. You can management, and you're only going to have to work on it for so long. And then we're going to take a break. Will hopefully help with that initiation of that. Does that make sense? I hope, to the person that. I hope that made sense. Okay. Right, and so then we talk about not allowing them to quit, or helping them really push through it, and they realize what they're made of. If we allow them to quit, it doesn't teach them anything. Even if it's something that they determine that they don't like when they're done with it, that's okay. But now they really know, and they've learned how to deal with a difficult situation. And when we rescue them, unfortunately, it can give them the impression that they can't do it anyway. When they say it's so hard, I can't do this, it's so hard. It's like, oh, you're right, honey, I'm going to help you with this. Well, it gives them the impression that they were right, that it is too hard. And it's not. They just need support, or they need some direction, or they need some other strategy to put into place to help them. So we're really not doing them any favors when we rescue them. Oh, good. I'm glad that makes sense. When we rescue them too early. Now, you don't want them to flounder forever, obviously. As parents, it's very hard for us to watch our kids struggle, and we don't like it, but they're going to be better off if we can step back and allow them to have that struggle for at least a little bit before we jump in and rescue them. Because unfortunately, we're not going to be there when they're in college to rescue them. We're not going to be there with them when they get their first job to rescue them. And so they need to learn how to navigate those difficult situations on their own. And it's like, you know, I've done difficult things before. Like, I did this when I was in college, or I did this in sixth grade. So I know I can manage middle school. If we give them that tool to know how strong they really are in difficult situations, it really allows them to grow into a more confident and independent person, where they know that they can manage that. Okay, so we talked about all of that. So then the next one we're going to talk about is flexibility. And some of our kiddos are not very flexible. It's their way. Oops, sorry. It's their way or the highway. And flexibility, we all know, you got to be flexible. Life just doesn't always work out the way that we want them to. We have to be able to change our behavior. We have to change our mindset. We have to change our attitude towards things when it's necessary. When kids get frustrated that their routines are disrupted, or they're not successful at something at the first time, like with my son, he was not flexible. He's like, I'm never skiing again. And unfortunately, I allowed that, but I didn't. What I should have done, going back in time, I should have had a conversation with him about how it's supposed to be difficult. Skiing is not an easy thing to accomplish the first time, and we're going to try it again. And maybe this time I'll go to the class with you, or we figure something else out where he is willing and able to take another run at it from a different angle. It's like, oh, okay, my mom said it's supposed to be hard. Oh, she's in class next to me, and look, it's hard for her too, so it's going to be okay. And then going through it that way. And so showing them that there is a different route to the same desired outcome, but it may not be the one that they wanted. And we know that in life. Like, we make plans and the universe laughs at us. It's like, you think that's the way you're going? That is not the way you're going. And you have to reroute your plans to the way that things are happening to be successful. Flexible thinking, it's part of a key component in school. It's like reading comprehension, learning how to read words, learning how to understand things. Teachers teach kids how to do things from a variety of different angles, and it's important to be able to have those in your knowledge bank, so that when you come across something, it's like, it's not just one way that you know how to do it. It's like you can come at it a different way. Math competency, studying, test taking tips, all of those things. So one of the things that helps kids with flexibility when you're transitioning between activities is give them a little bit of time, especially if it's an unscheduled transition. If they usually know that they go from ballet to pick up their brother at swimming to this, but now something got mixed up, you need to give them a little bit of time and a forewarning if you can. Sometimes life happens and you can't, and you just have to go with it. But if you can allow them that transition to wrap their brain around what's going to happen next that they weren't necessarily prepared for, it definitely helps. Showing them several ways to work on a task or solve a problem, and have them changing approaches, especially if one doesn't work. One of the examples we talk about in class is that if 3 people in the class make chocolate chip cookies and they share their recipe and the recipes are all different, then which one is the right recipe? And they're like, well, they're all right. And they realize that. And it's easy when they're not in the heat of it, because part of it is when they get frustrated and anxious is that it makes the flexibility less likely to happen because they shut their brain off. So if you can sort of go back to that calm routine and calming themselves, it allows that brain to, that thinking brain to stay on. And then they're more likely to be able to examine a situation from a different angle, and they'll be more able to accept it. Like I just sort of talked about, stopping your child and helping them cope with those unexpected routines and schedules. It's like giving them the opportunity to just sort of sit with it a second and process it, and share with them that there's different ways to approach the same situation. I think Legos are a really great example. Some kids want the Lego, I don't think they're called kits, but the Lego building things to be exactly, you have to go page by page by page by page to build it exactly this way. Another kid might look at the picture of whatever's on the outside of the box and build it his own creative way. I don't think one is better than the other, but it just shows that different brains approach one situation in a variety of ways. And it's like, and it's okay. And they need to understand that just because that's how their brain is, there's also another way that your brain can learn to incorporate that thinking. One of the things that I like to talk to kids about is thinking about flexibility as a railroad track or water. And are you a railroad track brain? And when you come to this like little bullseye in the road, what do? Somebody who is not flexible is going to get stuck there, and they're never going to be able to move beyond that point, and they can't think their way around that. If you are more of I actually call it a water brain. If you're more of a water brain and you come to this rock, how are you going to get around it? You are going to flow around it. You're going to take a different course. You're going to go a different way. And so if you sort of think about flexibility that way, is that when you come to that stopping point, are you able to get around it, and how are you able to get around it? Do you get stuck and you can't move? Or are you able to flow and think about it a different way around it? So that is basically, let's see, where are we? We're at 6:45. Okay, good. So that's about right. So that is basically what I wanted to cover tonight. If there's questions, and I don't know if you guys want to screenshot these. I know it's going to be up on the website. Seth Perler, I explained initially, he touts himself as an executive functioning coach. He's got a website. A lot of stuff is free, but you got to give him your email. But he's got a lot of good free downloads that you can get. Understood is where I had that luggage tag that you can get, and they've got some other great things on executive functioning as well. And then here's some books too that you may be interested in. And then there's my information. If you want to reach out to me, you can. Email's probably the best. I'm rarely in my office. I'm usually out at schools. And then the parent you address is in the chat box.